Hi, welcome to Horns Eye Studios. Here we are with a brand new series for you, brand new format. I'm still doing the 666 seconds videos, but adding some content with some longer videos that so many of you have been asking for. And, we got a lot of good content here on Murder Metal Mayhem. So we got the shorter content, longer interviews, and all sorts of things with the podcast and that sort of stuff. And I've got Blahgergirl with me here. She's our go-to for this Idaho 4 case because she just can't get enough of it. How's it going,
Yeah.
Blahgergirl?
Good. Hi, Pete. It's so nice to see you again.
Definitely, definitely. So what is it about the Idaho 4 that you think just has you just going crazy?
Sure. Well, the police corruption, I think that there's something going on there. I hate to say that, like we've both discussed, we hate talking poorly about police and law enforcement, but
Yeah.
something is not right in this case. It was not handled properly, and it's giving a bad name to good law enforcement everywhere. So that was number one for me. I guess if you follow that up, it's there's a lot of deception in this small town that I think is fascinating. How it's all intertwined,
Hmm.
and everything's connected somehow in a bizarre way, and we keep
So
finding
crazy.
more and more ways, Pete, that they're connected. I
So
think
many
it's bizarre.
rabbit holes. I've never seen so many rabbit holes in a case in my life. So
Never.
we picked this as the subject matter for this very first episode of True Crime Deep Cuts, which is this new series. I'm very excited, and we've got a good one for you guys tonight. And so we're going to mention the different topics that we're going to cover here. And the first one is going to be the concept of a co-defendant, which
Mm,
definitely is going to get some people interested. Well, you and I'll have a conversation about that.
right. We're going to be using an excerpt from A.R. Hayes's interview that you guys did together,
Mhm.
and where he discusses his thoughts on the co-defendant and from a convict's side point of view.
Yeah.
And so that'll be really interesting to see that. I've seen it, but I think people will be nice to see that again if they've seen it already. If not, if you haven't, it's going to be wonderful to watch.
Yeah. And then we're going to discuss the concept of a fifth injured person that we talked about, on the channel before, but it's going to be an interesting conversation here. And we go through this one with you.
Absolutely. I know you guys, I think Unfiltered Lucky did a clip on his channel, so we're going to be showcasing that as well, to where he talked about a fifth person potentially being injured, and it mentioned early on in the case.
Yeah, that's a fascinating one. And so it's going to be a good one for you guys tonight. So I think it's time to dive down deep and do some true crime deep cuts. All right, so we are going to talk about the issue of a co-defendant. And when I did the interview with A.R. Hayes, that's where I first heard him bring it up. And it really was fascinating, Blogger Girl, because I thought, wow,
Yeah.
that's something a lot of people haven't really brought up much. So I know there's been some
No.
issues you wanted to talk about.
Absolutely. Yeah, just to piggyback off of that, AR, his take on things is so unique. It's something
Mhm.
I've never heard before. And something I would probably never know or hear of, just because I haven't been in that position and the
Right,
people he's been exposed to. So his perspective is just wonderful to hear. Um,
right,
as
right,
far as like Brian Koberger, there he basically said at the supposedly, I should say allegedly, when he was arrested, that was there anyone else caught? Was there anyone? Did you
mhm,
find anyone else? And I wanted to point out that Brian Enton of News Nation was the only person to have reported on that. I haven't been able to
right.
find it, and if you have any followers that can find something else to corroborate what he said in a tweet about Brian saying this, that would be great, because I haven't been able to find anything.
Mhm.
So I don't know if he was just putting that out there or if he has an inside scoop on something, but it was interesting that I couldn't find two sources to confirm that.
Right.
Um,
I heard a couple of different things about that. One thing I
right.
heard was that he wasn't read his Miranda rights when that was asked, and so that's
Oh
why
Lord.
they couldn't use it. when that was asked. That's what I heard as one version of it.
Maybe.
And there's a lot of stuff that happened in Pennsylvania that definitely makes me wonder, because single sources, some shadiness going on. I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff that happened out there in Pennsylvania that kind of makes me wonder. But that is interesting that he asked about if that's true.
Yeah.
Did you get anybody else, right?
Right. So because it makes you think that, okay, is there someone else there? Is it one or more people involved that we just don't know of yet?
Right.
Um, and that brings me to my next point. My mom actually found it. She was watching Dateline, and it was season 23, I believe, episode 15. So if you guys want to check that on, it's streaming on Peacock. But it's called The Secrets of Snake River. It's about a case from 2015, and lo and behold, look, the prosecutor was Bill Thompson.
Does he
And there
have
was
the
a lot
long
of
beard? Does he have
he
the
had a shorter one. He looked younger for sure, but same still vibe, same still good old Bill.
right?
But he had, in this case, the husband supposedly was, he's been convicted, so I guess I could say he's the killer of his wife because he's been
Mhm.
convicted at this point. But he was suffocating her, and his friend David Stone walked in while he was doing it and didn't really stop him, didn't do anything, helps him throw the body over into the Snake River. And
Wow.
he ended up testifying against his former friend. And so it brings the question of a co-defendant, and it's like, how weird is it that the prosecutor in this case is the exact same one we're going to have in Brian's case? So I
Right.
found there's a lot of similarities. If you guys should definitely check that out. There's more to that. I feel that there's a
Yeah.
lot of different things, but I
Yeah,
wanted
that's
to
really
bring that to
cool.
you. Yeah, I just saw that recently.
Yeah, and I've heard the Snake River mentioned as a potential place where maybe the murder weapon was tossed,
Right.
which is interesting. When you said
Oh,
Snake River, that was the first thing I thought of.
you know what popped in my head? And it was weird because you know how this university has this sick hold on this town, and everything has to
Mhm.
go through this, they're always threatening, like with the kids with the noise complaints, they're threatening with the school and the student council and all this. And then there's always something intertwined with that. And then the school gets the house, right?
Mhm.
They get the ownership of that. But in this case, the 2015 one with Bill Thompson, the co-defendant is on the bridge telling people what happened on camera, and he's wearing a University of Idaho t-shirt saying homecoming 2009. I'm like, this school,
Wow.
I swear, it's weird. I don't
It's
it's
like a
always
cult. It's like
yes.
Children of the Corn or some craziness
Well,
like
it kind of
that.
makes you wonder, like, are they gonna did he get a deal because of being involved with the school somehow? Like, and Bill
Yeah,
Thompson, because he's an alumni, like it brings into question, are
it
other
wouldn't
people in
surprise
BK's
me.
case, are they gonna get deals? Is that what
Right,
happened with the roommates?
right.
This code of potential. So that's gonna
Yeah.
be interesting.
Yeah, it's a valid point, and I know you and I have both expressed the same sentiment that we don't feel anybody did this by themselves. This had to
No,
be a team effort, whether it was 1, 2, 3, or 15. We just don't know. But would
right.
you still agree with that?
I still think I don't think it's really physically possible to do that in that short amount of time. Now, people, I know there's accounts that have tried to prove that it is, but I just don't see how you can't get any DNA on yourself and do that in that short amount of time. There has to
Right,
be more people.
right. And I definitely, pointed this out before, but here at Murder Metal Mayhem, and when we think that Brian Koberger deserves the right to his trial,
I
presumed
agree.
innocent until proven otherwise. So for the
Right.
time being, I'm on the fence there. I think that's, to me, the smarter place to be. But the fact that Brian was arrested and then asked about that, it definitely makes me, wonder if he
Yeah.
really did ask that or not. But another thing that's interesting with this is that PCA and the mention of suspect vehicle number one, and the web sleuths
Right.
just have gone nuts over that. And this white Hyundai Elantra, oh my gosh, it's a
I know.
Elantra, it's a Fiesta, it's a Chrysler 300. I mean, it's
I know.
nuts. But if there's a suspect vehicle number one, then the likely question or follow up is, how many others were there? The fact that they use that term, number one, makes you think there's got to be a number two at least, right?
I agree. I mean, I don't see, I'm trying to understand if that's just normal protocol and they just usually say that, or if that's because you have to number it because there's more than one. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm not sure about that either. Why they use that language, or if that was a slip of the tongue,
Yeah,
which is very
I know.
possible, like
Very
oops.
possible.
Yeah, so that's an interesting part of this.
So I know we're going to move on. Let's see what AR has to say about this co-defendant in this case.
Yeah. Do you think the gag order's in place because there's they're protecting an informant?
Yes.
Because
I
I
believe it's
wondered,
another.
there's that drug bust, the big one that happened a month after this,
Jesse James
involving,
Bailey.
yeah. Now that's a scary situation with that, but I wondered
Yep.
if this had something to do with that, and that's why they're protecting people, but I don't know. I just was throwing it out there.
I feel there's a second co-defendant. I don't even believe it's just an informant. I believe there's a second person involved that's now become a state witness. That's my
Really?
feeling. That's my
Oh,
feeling,
wow.
because he asked right away, and
If
through
anyone else.
all the documentation that Ann Taylor originally filed was looking for a co-defendant. She
Interesting.
wanted the name of a co-defendant. There's
Well,
something there.
It's always great to get AR's perspective on things. He's got such an interesting viewpoint, from a former convict. And so I thought that was cool. We were able to play that piece of that interview to kind of put an exclamation point on this whole thing, and to toss it out there to everybody listening or watching, to see what they think, because I think, there's always varying viewpoints. So.
Right. Exactly. And there's always two sides to every story. And so we like to hear both sides. And we've heard the law enforcement side, but I'd like to hear maybe the sides we haven't heard. And so that's, I think AR highlights that really well.
Yeah.
And I know that there's definitely a possibility that there's a co-defendant here. It would explain why they said so early on that it's an isolated case, that there's no danger to the community. And why they were so okay with the house being torn down. To me, those are points that would tell me that there maybe is an eyewitness. The fact that they're saying to Steve Gonsalves, relax, we've got this, which I don't think is cool. I think they should have never said that to him. But to me, it seems like, okay, they're so confident, but why? Is it because they have an eyewitness?
Right. It could very well be. It's an interesting point, which is going to lead into our next section we're going to be doing here as we move on through this, talking about the fifth person. All right, so we are going to talk about the potential of a fifth person, a fifth victim, and how that came up when I was doing the pre-interview with Lucky from Unfiltered Lucky, and I had never heard that before. What about you, Blahgergirl? Had you ever heard of that before?
No, I had never heard about that, and probably for good reason, because we can't find it anywhere, right? So
yeah, it was so fascinating, though, to hear about that first reporter from the scene when he, we're going to play that for you here. But, this just had to be total chaos. I mean, 911 gets called right before noon, and they show up and there's a bunch of kids there. I mean, they're like hanging out. And I mean, what a bizarre scene. You've got this gruesome, scene, very gory, and you got a bunch of kids there. I mean, what do you think about that?
I think it's bizarre. Like, why are you calling your friends before 911? I've always thought that since the beginning. I think that's why people got so interested in this case. Is it the 8-hour delay? Yeah.
Depends on the time of day. I think it happened more like 3:00. So you're really talking about a 9-hour delay in my book. But either way, it's a lot of time.
Too long. Yeah. Very, very much so. And you were going to talk about, I had never heard of this, but you were mentioning to me about the ambulance not being able to get in there. Can you tell me a little bit more about it?
Yeah, I had read somewhere that the ambulance crew that showed up, they weren't allowed inside. So the police really buttoned this thing down and kind of circled the wagons, which is what they're supposed to do. But the ambulance crew certainly should have been allowed inside, unless they knew that there was obviously no hope for any of these victims, and so they didn't want them to
Right.
disturb the scene. Maybe that's protocol, but it just seemed a little odd to me that they would have been like, nope, we don't need you here.
Yeah.
Please me. But maybe that's, protocol. I'm really not sure about that, but I just thought that was interesting. And the first two law enforcement officers that show up from the Moscow PD have all sorts of skeletons in the closet that
Oh,
I
yeah.
brought up in other videos. So this is just, one thing after another here.
Absolutely, and I've never seen that before. You think they'd be the first in the scene, even
Mhm.
regardless if the people are deceased or not. But let's see what Lucky had. He had something on his channel, so let's see what he has to say about that fifth person at the scene.
Okay.
Maybe they have the rabbit in the hat. On November 13th of 2022, the day that the Idaho 4 crimes occurred, Robin Nance from KXLY News in Idaho did an on-scene lead-in breaking news report about the Idaho 4 crimes. And in this report, she was basically giving a lead-in to what they were about to air on their 5 o'clock news about the Idaho 4. Now, Robin Nance said, and I heard this with my own ears, and I saw this with my own eyes. And she said, tragedy on the University of Idaho campus. 4 students dead, another in the hospital. Now, I didn't really think too much of it at the time because there was all kinds of news reports that were just coming out because these crimes had just occurred. So later on that night, when KXLY started airing their video coverage of the Idaho 4 crimes, the part about the individual going to the hospital was left out. They never mentioned that part. Now, I didn't think anything strange of it at the time because these crimes had just occurred. So I just figured that, that KXLY was focusing on the 4 students who lost their lives. Now, when Chief Fry of the Moscow Police Department gave his first press conference, he basically stated that they had no leads, they had no suspect in custody, but he reiterated that law enforcement did not believe that there was a threat to this community or that anybody in this community was in danger from this suspect. Now, this made me believe right away that either the suspect was deceased or that they had a suspect in custody. Now, I also was thinking maybe they're not talking about a suspect that they have in custody right now because they're looking for more suspects. So it's possible, I was thinking at the time that maybe they do have a suspect because how could you say that the community wasn't in danger unless you had eyes on this suspect? So at that time, I believed that it was possible that law enforcement had a suspect in custody, but they weren't releasing that information because they were looking for more people. When I saw this press conference, I immediately thought about the KXLY news report on the day of the crimes. Because in this press conference, not nowhere was it mentioned that someone from this crime scene went to the hospital. I knew that I had seen this report. And so I went back to look for this news report, and I could not find it anywhere. It's like it was scrubbed off of the earth. I've looked for it. I have other people looking for it. And that news report is nowhere to be found. Now, I know that I saw that news report. And I know that a lot of other people saw that news report. In a previous video, I talked about this a little bit. And a lot of people reached out to me to let me know that they had seen that same exact news report. So I wasn't the only one who was confused about this reporter saying that another was in the hospital. There were others who also heard that, and they were confused as to, why this other person who went to the hospital wasn't in the news anymore. There was no talk about this individual anymore. Now, some people were so curious that they actually reached out to Robin Nance from KXLY and asked her if she was misspoken when she said that 4 students were dead and another in the hospital. Now, Robin Nance responds through Messenger, and I'm unable to confirm the source of where I got this information. So I can't confirm that these screenshots are absolutely 100% authentic. So before I show you these screenshots, I just want to let you know I cannot confirm this source, and I received this from an anonymous, source. So before I show this, I can't really confirm it. So I'm going to show you the information, and you can think what you want about it. But Robin Nance appears to respond to a person's question that she possibly misspoke about there being another person in the hospital. And Robin Nance, if these messages are authentic, Robin Nance responds, and she says that what I said was tragedy on the U of I campus. 4 students dead, another in the hospital. Then she allegedly says in these messages that she realizes that they didn't air the part about the person going to the hospital that morning. She also says that there's a lot of pieces to this story that law enforcement isn't talking about. And she appears to confirm that in these messages. So was someone taken to the hospital that morning? We know that EMTs did show up to the house at 1122 King Road when 911 was called. Now, it's also been reported that nobody was taken by ambulance from the house. So is it possible that maybe this person who went to the hospital was taken to the hospital by private car and, maybe left the crime scene before anybody else got there? So nobody would have known about this person. Now, this person could either be, an accomplice to the suspect. Maybe he or she got injured in the act of these crimes. Or it could very well be somebody who was the victim, who managed to get away from the house. If somebody did go to the hospital that morning that was in the house during the time of the crimes, it would make sense why law enforcement, would keep this a secret. They wouldn't want this eyewitness to be compromised. So it would make sense that they wouldn't talk about this eyewitness because nobody would really know about this eyewitness. So it's very possible that the prosecution doesn't have any more evidence to present to the defense in discovery because maybe they feel like they don't really need it. Because it's very possible that they have an eyewitness, whether it's an accomplice to the suspect or a victim that got away from the house, as I said. That would explain why they were so confident that this was an isolated incident, isolated to this house. Because maybe they have somebody who was on the inside when these crimes occurred. Now, I guess we'll find out when the trial comes. You know, I think it's very possible that we may see.
Well, that was an interesting clip. I had not heard of that until I saw Lucky's interview. What about you, Pete? Did you hear about that before that interview?
No, we did that pre-interview is where he brought it up, and then it was a few days later I saw his episode where he talks about that, his video, and that was fascinating. The screen captures and everything of the conversation. So really interesting, and we're going to be bringing in different creators onto these True Crime Deep Cut episodes. You know, so if you like Lucky and A.R. Hayes and Clue and Andrew Myers and Pia from Strange Suspicion, and we're definitely going to bring in some different perspectives on these cases that we talk about. So
definitely. And then,
so what about that fifth person? Do you think that that person could have been could be a co-defendant, or do you think maybe they were just injured, maybe happened to be at the house? Never heard about this other than that one mention.
yeah, I hadn't either, and I haven't seen anything since. And it tends to make you wonder: could there be more than one? Is it just the one co-defendant, or could there be more than one person?
Right.
And I never thought about that until now.
Yeah, and I know that when I talked to A.R. Hayes about that, you know, he said the last thing Brian wants is a co-defendant, because normally when that happens, you get them flipping on each other. So the first person, right, that makes the deal, isn't that usually how it works? The first person to tell the police, they cooperate. And, you know,
so first person that gets the deal usually gets the better end of the deal. That's for sure.
Right.
And that's what made me think about that case that I saw, the Snake River case. He says he didn't get a deal on that. And that it was just his pastor that made him come to Jesus moment kind of thing. But
right.
I don't know what would be his reasoning to do it. I mean, he's saying, "Oh, I had a conscious moment," but I'm like, I don't know. This whole prosecution, I feel like there had to have been something in there for him. They're just maybe not talking about it, but that makes you think: is it going to be the same thing in this case? You know, with Bill Thompson's being the same prosecutor.
Yeah, I mean, you know, old dog, new tricks, or if he's just going to pull out the same stuff that he's got in that hat of his.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think that's interesting. And AR also brought up the whole confidential informant issue in this case, which could certainly be in play here as well. So a lot of stuff going on there. But it is suspicious that that report just gets scrubbed from the internet. I mean, we've seen that though with other stuff. You know, I know there was an early Steve Gonzalez interview with Fox and Friends that's where he brought up that Kaylee, he believes, may have called 911 at 3:00. And then that part of the interview that was taken out, because if you listen to it now, it's not there, but it was there. I've heard it. And I'm not the only one that heard it, you know, so
I've heard rumors about that. Yeah, I've heard rumors about it, that it existed, and then all of a sudden it doesn't exist. And so it brings you to like the Brian Enton tweet not being able to be corroborated, and there's nothing really else out there about it. And then you got this case, this thing with Brian Enton, and then what was the one after that? I'm blanking. Okay.
Oh, right.
It's the anchor.
The 3 a.m. 911 call makes me wonder, because, you know, there was a 911 call supposedly at 3 a.m. about the kids on the band field, which I'm finding that very hard to believe. I mean, who is calling on these kids? And if they're the 4 or three that they're talking to there. I mean, they don't look that drunk for anybody to be calling 911 over it. So that's suspicious. Almost makes me wonder if she really did call, but they changed the log to show it was about something at Banfield because it was right at the same time, So I don't know.
Absolutely. Yeah, I keep
Yeah.
wondering who's calling because you have those 3 noise complaints prior to the murders too, and you're like, aren't there all their neighbors like college-age students? Like, who would be calling on each other? Like,
I know it doesn't make any sense.
I
My
don't
wife
see
and
any
I have
calling.
said that, like, why are you living in that area if you're not going to be able to deal with a bunch of crazy nonsense, right? I mean, it makes no sense.
Absolutely.
I mean, either you're in the
Right.
scene or you're okay with the scene. I can't imagine, being a person that needs quiet all the time living there. It just doesn't make
Right.
much sense to me, and
It
I
doesn't.
just wonder why, the mainstream or legacy media, I've never heard them mention anything about that original reporter from the scene. That's just really weird that
No.
nobody's talking about it. I mean, Lucky said he saw it and heard it, and a lot of his listeners from that area were the ones that also echoed that same thing. So it's
Mhm.
just one crazy case, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, when it comes to this IDAHO 4 case, everything is just so strange and mysterious, isn't it? I mean, it's the weirdest thing.
It's not just like strange, mysterious. It seems to be not only scrubbing things from the internet, like they don't want it out there. Then all of a sudden they place this extremely harsh gag order on everyone in the case, and
Right.
I think that there's more to it than just protecting a potential co-defendant. I think you had that drug bust that happened shortly after. I mean,
A
there could be
month
something
later.
else at play here.
Yeah, I think they could tie together for sure. I've brought that up, I know, in some of my videos of that potential issue there. But this case just, boy, it's just so mysterious. But I thought, it was worthy to bring up this fifth person report as part of this conversation. So
Absolutely.
let's go to the conclusion. All right, so we've given you guys some information, and I think it's definitely something to think about. This whole co-defendant in the case and this fifth person, and could they be one and the same? Certainly, a lot of questions here, Blogger Girl. I mean, it's
Absolutely.
no surprise in Idaho 4, right?
No, it just makes you like every time you feel like you're getting to some sort of answer or conclusion in something, like 3 more questions arise. And so
Right.
it just makes you feel like this is never ending. Like,
Right, exactly.
But it's really nice to see from a viewer's perspective, because I'm also a viewer and Horns High Club, go Horns High. Seeing these type of interviews that you do, and seeing how the creators are collaborating, I guess myself included, it's fun to see different perspectives. Like you got AR and the former convict, you got Lucky, who gives his like they're both very simplified ways of doing it. I think that's what you guys all have in common. It's simple, it's to the point, it's very like layman terms for us to understand as viewers, and I find that very fun, energetic, and innovative too, that you guys are coming together.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people say that, well, you're the only one doing anything like this. And I would agree. I've never seen anybody else do interviews with the other creators. And I've always done so many interviews on Murder Metal Mayhem with musicians and artists and authors and all sorts of people. And so I thought, why not do it, with the creators? These are people that I'm interested in, and obviously a lot of the viewers are as well. And so, yeah, if you like that kind of stuff, we've got a playlist of nothing but the interviews. So I'll try to link to that in the description below so you can see some of these. I've done Dr. Catherine Ramsland, which was Brian's college professor when he was at DeSales University. I interviewed her in 2019 and again in 2020. I've done the Vampire of Paris, Nico Clos, which is a fascinating interview we did with him. So there's a lot of good interviews out there on the channel. But But yeah, I think this definitely makes us all think when you bring up a subject like this that you didn't really hear in very many places. So
Absolutely. This whole case has been strange and mysterious. There's no wonder why everyone is talking about it, and different creators have all these different perspectives, and I feel like I've learned something from each individual creator's channel, something new. Or just a different way that they display the information. I may have heard it before, but the way that they talk about it, their input from their own background, like you did the inspections. That was an interesting view, the point that I hadn't before. AR being the former convict, that I hadn't seen that before. So those are things that, like, for me as a viewer, it was fun to watch, and I'm excited to see what's to come and what we can all accomplish together.
Yeah, definitely. Very cool.
Okay.
So we appreciate you guys checking out this first episode of True Crime Deep Cuts. Love to see what you guys have to say about it. So comment below. Any other suggestions of any other topics that you'd like me to go deeper in rather than the 666 format, some deeper cuts like this? So let us know down below.
Absolutely. And just make sure that you guys keep it civil in the comments, be kind, respectful to each other. We're trying to create a really inclusive environment here for everybody to feel that they can say what they want to say, but not be treated poorly. So just make sure you keep it civil.
Right. Definitely. Thanks, Blahgergirl, for coming on here to discuss this
Absolutely.
with me. It was a lot of fun.
It was.
And yeah, thanks to AR Hayes for doing that interview with me, and for Lucky for letting me use that clip from his channel. So we appreciate that from all those guys. And of course, want to say thanks to the Hornseye Club. You guys are awesome. I'm Pete Altieri from Murder Metal Mayhem.
And I'm Blahgergirl.
And thank you for watching True Crime
Deep Cuts.